Let this quiet myth drift around you like soft evening fog, and let the story carry you gently into sleep. It is not famous. It appears on no national list of historic places. It doesn't have a remarkable bridge or a great tragedy attached to it. Yet for nearly 200 years, an unusual myth lived there. A myth so calm, so uneventful, that outside the region, almost no one ever bothered to write it down. In the sleepy town of Briar's Landing, a place surrounded by pine woods and long stretches of empty farmland, people believed that the river once whispered names. Not loudly, not clearly, just softly. As if speaking from behind a curtain of time. The oldest stories said the river whispered only at dawn, when the mist hovered low and the world seemed half awake. It never warned of danger, never predicted the future, never sang of heroes or monsters. Instead, it spoke forgotten names. Names that history had misplaced. Names that never made it into books. Names that mattered to no one but the river itself. And that was why most Americans never heard the myth. It was too gentle, too quiet, too unimportant to follow the louder legends of the West. But the people of Briar's Landing believed. They always believed. Among them lived Elira Marsh, an aging historian who had dedicated her life to collecting small, nearly vanished stories of early America. She didn't chase sensational tales, not the gold rush madness, not the outlaw trails, not the ghost stories that filled late-night radios. No. Elira was drawn to the soft myths, stories whispered by places, not people. When she heard about Stillwater Bend, she felt something shift inside her, a kind of gentle tug, as if the river had whispered her name too. So, on a cool autumn morning, she packed her notebook, a thermos of warm tea, a wool scarf, and took the long drive south to Briar's Landing. The road was empty, lined only by tall pines that swayed lazily, as if stretching after a long sleep. When she arrived, the town looked exactly like the kind of place that would keep an old myth alive. Quiet, slow, almost untouched by time.
There was a diner, a hardware store, 2 antique shops, and a small post office that looked like it had forgotten what letters were. People sat on porches as though the world was meant to move gently. In the center of town stood a faded wooden sign, Briar's Landing, established 1832, home of the Whispering River. Elira smiled. It was rare to see a place take such pride in something so ordinary. A line of pink across the distant echo. A soft syllable carried on mist. Not a full name, just the shape of one. Ara. trying to assemble it into something real. Hand on the cold wooden railing and breathed slowly. There was no fear, no rush of excitement, just a quiet certainty. The myth was real. Not dramatic, not magical, not grand. Just real. In the soft Later that morning, Eleora visited the small local museum, a single-room building with dusty glass cases and faded newspaper clippings. Behind the counter sat an elderly man with white hair combed neatly to the side and spectacles that slid down his nose whenever he looked up. His name was Merrick Childs, the unofficial keeper of the town's memories. When Eleora mentioned the river and the whisper she thought she heard, Merrick didn't laugh, didn't raise an eyebrow, didn't act surprised. He simply nodded. "Most outsiders don't hear it the first time," he said quietly. "You must be the listening type." Eleora leaned forward. "You've heard it too?" "Since I was a boy," Merrick replied. "The names change. They come and go. Some return after decades. Some appear only once." "What do the names mean?" she asked. Merrick smiled gently. "Oh, nothing exciting. Not lost treasure, not hidden messages. Just people history forgot, folks who lived quiet lives, people who passed long before records were kept well." He paused. "America has loud stories, you know, battles, rebellions, pioneers, explorers. But underneath all that, there were millions of small lives that history didn't bother writing down." He looked out the window toward the slow-moving river. "The myth isn't about the names. It's about remembering that the forgotten people once lived." Eleora felt something settle warmly in her chest. The story wasn't about mystery. It was about gentleness, about honoring silence. And yet, as she walked back toward her inn that afternoon, she felt a question forming softly inside her. Why was she the one who heard the whisper clearly? Why now? And more importantly, who was the name meant for? The next morning arrived, wrapped in pale gold light. Eleora Marsh woke early, long before the town began to stir. Outside her window, Briar's Landing looked washed clean, porches glistening with dew, pine branches drooping under moisture, and the distant river lying still and silent. But Eleora felt different. not restless, not frightened, just called. The faint whisper she heard the previous day had followed her into sleep, hovering at the edge of her dreams like a memory that didn't belong to her. Hen. Soft, incomplete, unclaimed, as if the river had only spoken half of a person. She dressed quietly, wrapped her scarf around her shoulders, and made her way toward Stillwater Bend again. The mist was thicker today, curling around the water like pale fingers. The world seemed more distant, as if wrapped in cotton. Eleora stood at the same railing and closed her eyes. She waited, not forcing, not expecting, just listening. At first, there was nothing, only the slow breath of the river and the occasional drip of moisture from pine needles. Then, a faint exhale of sound, so quiet she thought it was wind. Hen. But this time, the whisper didn't drift away. It lingered, soft, trembling, wanting to be remembered. Eleora opened her eyes slowly. The surface of the river was calm, but something beneath it seemed to tremble. She whispered gently, as though speaking to an old friend. "Who are you?" No answer came, only a small ripple touched the bank. But Eleora felt sure now this was not just a myth. It was an invitation. The river wasn't repeating random, forgotten souls. It was returning one name, again and again. A name that wanted to be restored. Aaron? Arahin? Arahen? She didn't know. But she felt the shape of it settling deeper in her mind. Later that day, Eleora visited Merrick Childs again. The elderly historian greeted her with a warm nod, as though he had been expecting her. She sat across from him in the tiny museum filled with quiet artifacts, their glass cases glowing faintly in the afternoon sun. "I heard the name again," she said. "Clearer this time." Merrick's eyes brightened just a little. "Describe it." Eleora repeated the whisper softly. When she finished, Merrick leaned back, folding his hands across his chest. "I haven't heard that one in many years," he said quietly. "It might belong to the old ledger." "The ledger?" Merrick rose slowly, walked to a locked cabinet, and returned with a thick, leather-bound book whose edges had nearly crumbled away. He placed it gently on the table. "This is all that's left of the earliest names in Briar's Landing. Not heroes, not founders, just people." Eleora opened the book with careful fingers. Inside were pages filled with delicate handwriting, the kind that belonged to eras when ink dried slowly and patience was a shaping tool. But many entries were smudged, faded, or blotted out by time. She scanned them, line by line, name by name. Peters, Jansen, Marlowe, Eves. Then a torn, nearly illegible entry. R. Hen Morrow, drowned
age unknown. Her breath slowed. The ink was faint, the letters uncertain. But the shape was right. Merrick watched her expression carefully. Most of the river's whispers belonged to people whose names were recorded clearly. It remembers what was truly forgotten, the ones with no story left. Eleora traced the broken letters. Erhenmaro. Is that the name? She murmured. Possibly, or possibly not. Names blur over time, like soft chalk in rainfall. Eleora closed the ledger gently. But why would the river whisper it now? She asked. Merrick's smile was sad and small. Because someone finally came who listens. That evening, Eleora walked through Briar's Landing again. The town was quiet, storefront lights dimmed, porch lamps glowing faintly through strands of mist. She paused near the river once more. Erhenmaro. A name with no history, no age, no date, no family, no story. Just one torn line in a ledger and a whisper in a river. It struck her. This was the kind of life most Americans once lived. Small, unrecorded, drifting quietly into the background of time. The nation remembered the noisy figures, the leaders, the explorers, the revolutionaries, the generals. But beneath that loud history lay centuries of silent existence. Farmers, tradesmen, mill workers, wanderers, people who woke with the sun and passed unnoticed. People who became myths not because of what they did, but because they were forgotten. Erhenmaro was one of them, and for some reason, the river had decided not to let him disappear completely. As darkness settled and the first stars appeared, Eleora whispered softly into the mist, "I hear you." And from the river, a single quiet ripple replied.
The next day arrived with a heavy, gentle stillness. Clouds hung low over Briar's Landing, casting soft silver light across the rooftops. Eleora felt a quiet determination settling behind her ribs as she walked toward the river once more. Today didn't feel like listening, it felt like answering. Mist curled above Stillwater Bend as though the river was breathing out stories older than the town, older than the ledger, older than memory itself. Eleora rested her palms against the railing and spoke softly. "Arhen, if that is your name, I'm here." The river did not swirl or rush, it simply stilled. A silence so complete it felt like the world had paused to listen. Then a whisper rose, not in her ears, in her chest. "Remember." The word unfolded in her like a soft ache. She closed her eyes and let the sound settle inside her, the way a leaf settles on water. Images drifted through her mind, not sharp or clear, but warm, like distant lanterns in fog. A man standing near the same river, a small boat tied to a crooked post, a coat patched too many times, hands worn, steady, gentle. A life quiet enough to go unrecorded, but not unlived. When Eliora opened her eyes, the river was moving again, slow, steady, certain. She whispered, "Arhen Maro, your name is remembered." And then she felt it. A shift, a soft loosening in the air, as if something heavy that had been waiting years to fall finally drifted down. The whisper faded, not disappearing, but settling, like a story that had finally been acknowledged.
Eliora placed a hand over her heart. "I'll keep it safe," she told the river. "I'll keep you from being forgotten." That evening she returned to Merrick Childs. He sat in his rocking chair outside the museum, watching the lamplight gather along Main Street. "I know the name now," she told him gently. "Arhen Maro." Merrick nodded slowly, as though the world had aligned with something old and patient. "Then write it," he said. He handed her the ledger, the crumbling book that held centuries of people Briar's Landing barely remembered. Eliora opened to the torn page and lifted her pen. With slow, steady strokes, she restored the name. Not rewritten, not corrected, simply remembered. As she closed the ledger, a soft breeze moved through the open doorway, fluttering the edges of the old pages. Merrick smiled faintly. "You've given him back to time." Over the weeks that followed, Eliora returned to the river often. Not every day brought a whisper. Not every moment felt magical. But something had changed. The town seemed softer, gentler, as though a missing thread had been quietly woven back into its tapestry. People paused longer at the river. They looked at the mist with a little more wonder. They asked Eliora what she had heard, and she always answered the same way. Just a name that needed a place to rest. The myth lived on not as something frightening or mysterious, but as something deeply human. A reminder that even in a vast, noisy nation built on bold stories and loud histories, most lives were quiet, and those quiet lives deserved to be remembered. One evening, long after the sun had slipped away, Eliora stood again at Stillwater Bend. The river glowed faintly under the moonlight. A ripple touched the shore. Then a whisper, so soft it could have been imagination, drifted across the water. "Thank you." Eliora closed her eyes and let the silence settle warm and deep around her. Time moved on, and the river moved with it. But now it carried a name, Arhen Maro, a myth restored, a memory returned home. This story was written exclusively for Whispered Dreams. If a forgotten name whispered your way, would you try to remember it or let it fade back into the river of time?